Hi, my name's John Olkin. I'm the chairperson of LTV, and I cannot thank you enough for showing up on a Tuesday for this. Now, if you all had a chance to see Dan's work outside, isn't that beautiful? And there's more, they're for sale. And Dan has generously let us to have some of the money for the sale to keep the lights on. So you help us out, you help him out, and you'll have a beautiful piece of art in your house. So please take care of that, do that if you can. So Dan, a long time ago, in the last century, my wife and I, Linda, back there, who by the way curated the show, wave at least, Lindy, she hates this. We went to a thing at Pearson High, fundraiser, and a lot of the artists from Sag Harbor put their stuff in, and we're walking around looking at it, and it was really, most of it was quite lovely, and suddenly Linda stops and she points and says, "That one." And we put a bid on it and got it, and it happened to be a guy named Dan Welden. And that began our love affair with Dan. And so in the interviewing years, we see each other and say hi, and it's all very lovely. And about 7 months ago, we were at a function and ran into Dan. And I can't remember exactly how it all came up, but we're talking about hanging work and stuff, and Dan said something to the effect, "Well, I'll hang my work anywhere except a barroom." And he said, it wasn't because he doesn't like barrooms, he said, "It's too dark." I said, "Well, I have a very well-lit hallway here, and we'd be glad to put your work up." And he agreed to that. And I said, before I do that, I got to talk to Michael Clark, who's sitting way in the back there, who's the executive director of LTV, who really makes the thing work. I said, "Michael, you ever heard of a guy named Dan Welden?" And he says, he looks at me like I have two heads. And he says, "Of course. He was my art teacher when I was in high school." And he said, "I remember something he said." He went around the class one day and he said to ask the question, what's the best color? And one kid says, yellow for the sun. No one says blue for the sky. No one says green for the grass. And he says, no. The best color in the world is brown. And I said, "Brown?" He said, "Yes, it's the color of Earth." And Michael still remembers that to this day. So we got to talking, and we said, and Michael thought it was a great idea, and we'd do the thing. A little while later, Dan comes to me again. He says, "Look, I have this, this pianist from Argentina, a guy named Axel Quincke, and a poet named Mindy Kronenberg, and maybe we could do a live piece, have the art show and do a live piece." So we said, "Well, what do we got to lose? Let's give it a try." And so that's what you're going to see today. So what happens is Axel picked about 7 beautiful pieces and submitted them to us, to the artists here. And what you're going to see is Axel's going to play. When he's finished with each piece, Mindy will give a poem that she wrote in reaction to the music. She already heard the music, obviously. So she's going to give you a reaction to that. And then you'll have to watch Dan try and finish a painting in that time. And he's going to be working away. And we'll see, it's sort of like a melding of all the arts, and we feel like they all work together. So here we are. And it's called The Pianist, The Poet, and The Painter. Enjoy.
Encounter. I saw my mother in a dream, down a dark corridor, walking away from me, but turning slightly when I called her name. As I followed, she stayed steps ahead, continued walking and quickening at my pursuit. I took every pivot and turn, desperate to see her face, the gleam of her hazel eyes, a road map faded with time. 14 years since her death, since I heard the sound of her voice, looked into the mirror of my birth. Down unfamiliar passages and stairs, moving ahead of my anxious steps, she gestured as she paced ahead, her left hand urging, I stop, go back. And with that, I was standing alone. Murmuration. How is it birds twist and billow into a swollen net against the clouds, a vortex of dark wings into light? This magic lace, a dancing dream catcher, tattered by wind but healed in flight. They spin like desire escaping grief, love spiraling into hope, the heart shattered and made whole again. Sunday. 13th Avenue in Borough Park came alive in the morning as my father and I walked the rows of stores for our Sunday morning feast, a sepia memory in filtered light as I leapt at each window to his approving laughter, our bundles growing with baked goods, cheeses, meats, and flowers for our table. There she is, the small girl skipping along the many Brooklyn blocks, her hand in his. There he is, as he whistled and kept his boisterous stride, walking back to the awakened building, walking up to the tiny kitchen, walking through the doorway lit by the delight in my mother's eyes. moving. Even though I have settled, cloaked the floors, and studded the walls with pictures, I still imagine the empty spaces now filled with lamps and bookcases. I know where to find a glass or dish, which side of the medicine chest holds toothpaste or pills. Yet lying on the couch with my head slightly upside down, I see the rooms turned over, shaken loose of furniture, how they stretch around their light, as if these walls never held the voices or shadows of anyone's life. In my basement are the boxes that cradled books, clothing, records, trophies of habitats past. In the low light and dust, they jut out in angles, a stubborn reminder that no move, however tough, is forever. It comes to this. We know our dens by making our mark: a telephone, a mailbox, a TV antenna, a place for the kettle, the typewriter, the paper lining the shelves. It's where we sleep and brew our dreams, sit and eat the food we've prepared, settle and watch the rain by ourselves. It's where we soon forget the act of leaving. loss for words. Where do the words go? Those that once swirled in a gossamer light and landed on the page in effortless reverie. What happened to the fevered scribblings, seated by rhapsodic spirals, unfurled in the mind? I long for the sprites who whispered on command, sending bon mots to float and unfurl on my tongue. Why does language elude me, sweeping in and past my grasp? Those rascals of old wit, the prima donna phrases trotting out their purpled parlance. The wind carries fewer and fewer these days, dangled debris caught in a dying tempest. My restlessness and inner thesaurus tangled in a fight to find them on the wind, fading among tattered butterfly wings, rusted flower petals, the unfinished poems that curl at their edges. Solstice. It is winter, and the moon is suspended in the dusk. If I could stretch my arm that impossible distance, breaking the membrane of space and light to its pale, pitted surface, my hand would cup its roundness, powdery and scarred, cold to the touch, but glowing from where I stood, basking in its ethereal veil. It is winter, but I believe in love. My feet seeking the soft grass, matted by gloss to the hardened ground. Those stones and frosted reeds knuckle under the worn soles of my shoes. I am taking neither root nor flight, but feel the shiver of longing for the fire deep in the earth, reaching beyond gravity's clutch to the luminous mirror of desire. the piano tuner. He's moved into that room on the other side of the house, a small space with kitchenette, bath, and separate entrance. My landlord thinks him odd. When he walks, his short frame sways from left to right, a metronome topped with a hat. When he talks, his fingers tap the air and he pauses for the notes that might be heard. Sometimes before the light dies and birds mute themselves among darkening leaves, he stands on the porch and whistles to them, pledging to transcribe their song. He'll call to me, "Did you hear it? A new bird has settled in the trees." And he'll scratch out the tune on paper, penciling in the trills, the twitters, and the coos, fingers striking the wooden rail like his fine-boned hammers from Stuttgart. Head bent, he's waiting for a true tone to rise like the voice of God. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Dan. Play, Alex.
Axel Quincke, Mindy Kronenberg, Dan Welden. Have you ever seen anything like this before in your whole life? No. Now, if you want to hang around for a few minutes, the kids will be glad to answer some questions and talk about what you just saw. So come get a stool and I'll put this over. Sit over here, Mindy. I have a question. I'll start. So Dan. Yeah, sit together. Beautiful. Dan, you're credited with creating solar plate printing. Could you want to talk a little about what that is and how you got to doing it? Okay, thanks. So the next question. This doesn't come. You have to come up here.
Right, yeah, that's
Come
right.
closer. You guys
We'll
have-
take this here like that. Well, before we talk about that, let's talk about something important. And thank you, John, and also Linda and I also Axel and Mindy. I mean, I couldn't have done this without them. And yeah,
Before you go there,
Michael
Clark,
Michael,
Sebastian,
Sebastian.
Jason, who gave us the great pictures and the great lighting. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. And also, thank you for the audience for coming and bucking this traffic that you had to fight out there. And the solar plate. That's just a printmaking process that I developed back in 1970-71 that made use of discovering something that replaced traditional etching, because traditional etching uses acids and solvents and poisons and bad stuff. And I found this other technique that I developed that is much safer because it uses sunlight that hardens a particular material called polymer, and then water, which dissolves it. So I put the two things together, sunlight and water, and create art with it. So That's the short answer. Any questions from the audience? Can't see.
Okay.
Let Axel.
Okay. The first plan was Jan's plan was to play Rachmaninov Piano Concerto No. 2, but we don't have an orchestra. It was a little bit difficult. So after that, I asked Jan why we don't choose some Rachmaninov pieces, but also other composers. We had a list of, I don't know, like 15 songs, pieces. And then we chose, between us, some Beethoven. I started playing Rachmaninov, one of his first works, his Prelude number 2, Opus number 3. Then I played Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, first movement, which was called by him Quasi una Fantasia. We wanted to choose some works which are evocative and dreamy and like fantastic and like a fantasy touch. Then we chose Brahms, one of his latest works, which is his Intermezzo, number 2. Debussy, Chopin, one of his preludes, one of his 24 preludes. And then I finished the first part with the Hungarian Rhapsody by Liszt, Franz Liszt. Yeah, which is a different type of music, more folk, but it also has like a recitative and an improvisation part. Yeah. And I played also, this was not planned, but today we changed it a little bit because it's more like a similar feeling. I played 2 works by Piazzolla, which is an Argentinian composer, which is the first one is Libertango, and the other one is Adiós Nonino, which he wrote when his father died. And now I finished with an improvisation of blues. And before that, I played Hans Zimmer, that it's a German composer that he makes a lot of film music.
Mindy, you want to kind of come a little closer?
Well, I can semi-tethered here, but aren't we all? But I thank you for the comment about the poetry. And yes, I have books out. I didn't bring any, of course, but I can talk to you about that. I do have a book called Open, which I collaborated with artist Kate Kelly. So she has beautiful illustrations in it, and I have poems that go with the illustration. You didn't ask this, but I'm going to answer it anyway. In case any of you wondered about this aspect of collaboration, the process of ekphrasis, which comes from the ancient Greek term, is kind of developing an interpretation or narrative in poetry from another art form, from a nonverbal art form. And I've done it a lot with visual art. I did one of Dan's poems. And I work a lot with an artist from the Netherlands, Joost de Jong, and we've collaborated on his abstract art and my poetry and poetry of many other poets. And this is one of just the very few times that I used music as an inspiration point to create something. And it was quite a challenge, but Axel picked such a beautiful program. And the array of moods. I mean, some of these just summoned things in me instantly. Although I have to say the Hungarian Rhapsody was more of a challenge because of the pivoting of the temperament. But it's something that I find very fascinating in dipping into that, from poetry to visual art to music. So to be a part of something like this is a joy, because you see creation come to fruition. I should also point out, you're sitting next to Rocio Snyder, and yes, who was part of another art event in Belport, and I wrote a poem about one of Rosillo's sculptures. And that was also delightful. So I thank you for that, Rosillo. So thank you for your question. Any other questions? Oh. Yes. After we had decided on the program, which of course changed again, but he promised to keep the temperament the same. I, as my husband can tell you, sat intently with these recordings and listened to them continuously. Some had just summoned something in me with 2 or 3 listenings. I was familiar with almost all of them, but of course in the past I had never really sat with them deliberately to write something. I was enjoying them simply as music. So I would sit with them, and as things started to materialize, I would take notes. And then I sat down, and then I would have the piece play, and I would start to construct a poem. And then stop playing the music, and then just deal with the poem by itself. And then the poem came to completion. So it was over a matter of days, and then sessions sitting with the music and trying to see what my imagination could bring me. Yeah. I don't want to hog this mic. Anybody else? I haven't heard that term in so long, and I remember those. I remember the happenings, yes.
Dan did not know what he was doing. In fact, part of the time I couldn't see what I was doing because, no, in all honesty, my eyes were teared up because the sound and the words were so beautiful. And I mean it. Thank you. Yes. And it's usually classical, but sometimes I'll put on Bob Dylan. Sometimes, today I did, yes. But, you know, it's really, and thank you for the question, because I think music is the highest art form, personally. And you could disagree, but it just doesn't have to be identified. It could be looked at. It doesn't have to be analyzed. It doesn't have to represent anything. It is what it is, where people look at painting or listen to words and they try to go deeper into it and find a different meaning, or they find they want to be creative and interpret it in their way, where music is pure in my eyes. So And that's why I really enjoy it so much. I've never worked live before, so when Axel approached me and asked if I had ever done and worked with music, I said, sure. And then he said, live. And I said, no, I've never done that before. And he said, well, why don't we think about that? And so we thought about it for half a year. And here we are. And this really came to life. And it's just so wonderful, a wonderful experience. So, I mean, I'll use any excuse to paint. And I haven't really looked at this painting yet, except, I have to look at it alone without anybody around. And I don't know how it's going to resonate with me. If it's finished or not, I don't know. I will say that if anybody is interested in seeing what it looks like after I work on a little bit more, send me your email address and I will send you a photograph of this after I've done it more. And you can have it as a little memory of this evening. So that's the advantage that the visual world has a little bit more than the performances of both. Well, the words can also be remembered, and also this is a real fun. I will always remember this. I will cherish it forever. So,
As I will.
and somebody else had a question. It's a good point. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.